Welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship II, ladies and gentlemen, live from London in the UK. My name's Riley Knight, Simon Gertson with me, and Simon, I tell you what, we are going to have some very high-profile players in the feature match era. We have Jean-Emmanuel Depraz facing off against Matthew Costa, and both of these players, look, Simon, I'll be honest with you, I'll level with you, man. I'm not gonna try to hide the lead, bury the lead here. These guys are playing decks we've come to expect. Blue-White Phoenix, Blue-White Control. But look at some of these main deck choices, Simon.
Oh, sweet, sweet.
There's Matthew Costa, and look what he's playing. Boomerang in his main deck. It is the Blue Stone Rain. Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, however, is doing his very best impersonation of 15th century Italian assassin Ezio Auditore because he's playing main deck Rest in Peace. That's right. He's ready to resquiescat in pace.
And that must be the matchup he's looking
Oh, he's loving it. He's like all of his Christmas come at once, Simon. He can't believe his luck.
He's like, okay, you're playing Pyromancer Ascension, you're playing Arclight Phoenix, you're playing Faithless Looting.
Now, all of those cards have something in common, Simon. Now, I just can't put my finger on what it is.
Yeah, they will rest in peace.
Well, they will very much rest in peace. I think Matthew Costa is going to be pushing a fair bit of baggage uphill here as he tries to get one over on him. Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, the MPL player out of France, of course. This guy's been on a tear. Recent Mythic Championship top 8, Grand Prix Magic Fest champion as well. He's very well known to people like you and I who've been fans of the European Grand Prix circuit, Magic Fest circuit for many years, and now making it his name on the bigger stage.
Absolutely. It's easy to overlook some of these MPL players a little bit, especially if they don't have the same following yet. But when it comes to playing Magic exceptionally well.
Oh, and I mean, how much better than this does it get? How much better than it get? You are playing one of the hardest hitting sideboard cards against the deck that it absolutely tears apart, Simon. On turn 2, in game 1, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz out of the gates like a greyhound.
Yeah, and Matt Costa could prepare for that, because this round he did know that there were main deck rest in pieces waiting for him. But to be honest, there's not much you can do about it.
No, not really.
When you're playing Izzet.
I mean, not really. I mean, look, okay. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. He's still got Faithless Looting, which will draw him to cards that do something in this matchup, like a 3-mana 3/2 flying haste creature.
Yeah, hardcast Arclight Phoenix. Maybe play a Thing in the Ice. Thing in the Ice looks to be the only real way to still win this game.
Yeah.
And then I would say you're still playing against Blue-White Control. Blue-White Control is pretty good at dealing with creatures.
This is the thing. I mean, there isn't just enough threat density with a Rest in Peace in play for a card like, for a deck like Izzet Phoenix to actually have the impact that it needs to. We see Izzet Phoenix transition to a post-sideboard position, Crackling Drake and All-Star against Rest in Peace, hard-hitting threats that are going to get it done. But it doesn't come ready to deal with him in game number 1. Now, let's talk about Boomerang. Is this card, as a catch-all answer to just any permanent, obviously the purest way to cast it is targeting your opponent's land, but we'll come back to that. Is that a game plan for Costa? Can he use the bounce effect of Boomerang to buy enough time once the Rest in Peace is off the battlefield?
I like the idea. I think in practice it's probably not going to work out that way, because Blue-White Control has all these counters, all these removal spells to interact with, and Izzet Phoenix is not a deck that's running a lot of lands. So if you sit there with your 18-land deck and you can't really cast Faithless Looting until you've dealt with Rest in Peace, then what's your game plan? You're going to Boomerang on their turn, and then you have 3 mana available. How many Arclight Phoenixes do you want to get into your opponent's face that turn?
Like into your graveyard and then out of your graveyard, right? I mean, Boomerang is it's a very, very unique effect in this deck. Returning any permanent is going to be huge, but I don't think it's going to be enough here for Matt Costa to stitch together a win. I mean, we are looking. He's in a situation where his Arclight Phoenixes are just Vulshock Berserkers, which is just not. I mean, they fly. They do fly. They fly, but that's just not good enough in the modern format.
Another card that's not good against Rest in Peace is this Pyromancer Ascension. In my preview article, I wrote about how Arclight Phoenix and Thing in the Ice are already a pretty good combo at beating control and aggro strategies, and those are the only creatures the deck needs. And then Pyromancer Ascension, to top it all off, even if you play against a deck like Blue-White Control that's very good at dealing with creatures, suddenly You have Pyromancer Ascension to generate value and to even be able to win with Lightning Bolts alone.
But in this situation, Simon, it is actually... let me read you the Oracle text of Pyromancer Ascension right now as it stands on the battlefield. 1 in a red, enchantment.
Are you done?
That's it. I'm finished. You can make the next observation.
Yeah. Whenever all these lines with cards in your graveyard are just not going to be relevant.
The graveyard zone just doesn't exist thanks to this turn 2 rest in peace. We are hammering this point home, but this is the state of the modern format, ladies and gentlemen. This is the state of the modern format where the best players in the world, are coming with narrow sideboard cards in their main deck because of the percentage points they get against Dredge, against, a deck like Izzet Phoenix, the other splash damage that you got there. And the velocity of these lists with hieroglyphic illumination, with things like, with just simple cantrips even, they're able to mitigate the effect of having otherwise dead cards in a matchup like, say, humans.
You actually do see Surgical Extraction on Costa's side, so he's also choosing to main deck some Graveyard Hate, of course, a card that doesn't do anything right now. But I do have the feeling that this main deck Rest in Peace, we only do see it because of open deck lists and the Mulligan rule. Both of these things make it a lot more attractive to play main deck Rest in Peace.
All right, well, from Pache to Jache here as the most powerful Planeswalker ever printed enters the battlefield and immediately goes upstairs, a Fate Seal targeting Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. He is just pedal to the metal. Usually we see Jace come down, brainstorm the middle ability, draw 3, put back 2. But Depraz, he's ready to win this game. He knows that Matthew Costa is playing from so far behind.
There's also the reason that you just don't want to lose your Jace to a single lightning bolt.
Yeah. Yep, so he goes straight upstairs, straight to 5 loyalty here.
Does Depraz have Teferis as well?
He does have 2 copies of Teferi, 3 copies of Jace. Now, if you are interested in having a look at these deck lists, friends around the world, the Cardboard Live app is your way to do it. On your screen, if you're on desktop or on a laptop, you'll be able to click and have a look at the deck list of both these players and a metagame breakdown in addition to player statistics and career and all that sort of stuff. If you're on mobile, there's one extra step. Just click on the Cardboard Live icon. As part of the Twitch app. This thing is incredible, and it's going to get you across all of these deck lists. I was chatting with a couple of friends of mine during the break there in the round, Simon, and they were saying how amazing it was that a deck like the Vannifar combo deck that we had last round, we don't have to wait until Sunday or Saturday afternoon to see what that list is. You've got it right here, right now.
I completely agree, and if you were wondering why we are able to do this, it's because we have an open decklist policy at this event, which means that the main decks, all of your opponents are revealed to you at the beginning of the round. And there's a special thing about sideboards. You only know the cards in the sideboard, not the amount.
Well, there's a second rest in peace, just in case Matthew Costa wasn't buried far enough in the ground. Jean-Emmanuel Depraz has dug 12 feet down this time, and now Matthew Costa really is going. And look at the small smile on his face here. He's very happy with this. He knows he's in a commanding position. He knows that this game is his to win. But Matthew Costa, Thing in the Ice is probably the easiest way for him to head towards victory here. And he does have 2 copies of Crackling Drake, which in the main deck, which is a very important card in the face of Rest in Peace Summon.
Yes, Crackling Drake has power equal to the instants and sorceries in your graveyard and exile.
And in exile. So
Rest in Peace would be, for example, I believe Enigma Drake doesn't have that special property. So Enigma Drake would just be a 0/4.
Forever.
Crackling Drake is a lot more powerful.
Now, here is a boomerang, and I think, is that in response to the Rest in Peace here?
Exactly. Rest in Peace is on the stack, and the Rest in Peace that was already in play has just been bounced.
So in response now, a negate to take care of that Manamorphose, and I think this is a smart play from Depraz. He knows that he's in a commanding position. He knows that he doesn't need to give his opponent any breathing room whatsoever. Matt Costa, look, playing to the final whistle. He was like, this is my out. Even if it's 1%, I'm going to take it. But when he realized that the door was shut on him, that is that. An emphatic victory from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. These guys are going to hit their sideboards, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back live for game number 2 between these 2 players. We've got to go to a break, but stick with us. We'll be back after this.
Time for another mini deck tech, Frank. Is it Phoenix? No, it's Crackling Drake.
Well, Izzet Phoenix just runs lots of creatures that care about instant and sorceries. You have Thing in the Ice, which can transform pretty rapidly and just dominate any board, and Arclight Phoenix, which can return from the graveyard. The deck didn't even exist before Arclight Phoenix was printed in Guilds of Ravnica, but for several months now it has just been the deck to beat in Modern. typically hovering around, say, 15 or 20% of the day 2 metagame at modern Grand Prix tournaments. But even though Phoenix is the namesake card, and even though the deck relies on the graveyard, I wouldn't immediately classify it as a graveyard deck, because the heart of the deck, which you have here, are all the cantrips.
What do you mean by cantrip?
Cantrips is a way to describe cards that draw additional cards.
Okay, so they kind of replace themselves.
Yes, and in the meantime, well, you're triggering your Thing in the Ice, you are getting your Phoenix back from the graveyard, and yeah, you also sift through your deck. We often call it velocity. It helps you find your key cards, even your sideboard cards, and add a bunch of consistency to the deck. So this is really the heart of the deck, drawing a bunch of cards, and then either you can win with Thing in the Ice or with the Phoenix. This also means that well, if you board in Graveyard Hate, well, you might lose to the Thing in the Ice. If you board in Creature Removal, you might lose to Arclight Phoenix. Also, well, you can just keep drawing cards, but eventually you do need to affect the board or the game. Lightning Bolt and Surgical Extraction are key interactive spells. And Surgical even has some sweet synergy with the Crackling Drake that you mentioned. You can exile your own cards to grow the Crackling Drake. This deck is fun and powerful.
Yeah, and so we just go on and on. Back they come. Arclight Phoenix, enormous Crackling Drakes. Yeah, really great deck.
Ready we go. And welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship II in London, United Kingdom. My name's Riley Knight, joined by Simon Gertzen, and we're going to take a quick look in on a back table here while our main heroes are shuffling up and getting ready for game number 2. On our back table, well, you may recognise some of the faces on your screen right now. Ben Hull, a Mythic champion, and Tin Nguyen as well. Now, looks like Nguyen has picked up game number 1 here over the Canadian here. Ben Hull playing, look at this.
Are we still in the mulligan stage?
It looks like we're actually halfway through a serum powder mulligan. Now, Simon, I'm not intelligent enough to understand what's going on here, so maybe you can walk us through it.
So first of all, this is the red Eldrazi deck, and Eternal Scourge has kind of an upside when it's in exile. However, the important part here while mulliganing is that you get the benefit of the London mulligan, but also Serum Powder gives you a new hand as long as you exile your existing one.
So kind of exiling that little 3/3 for 3 there, the Eternal Scourge, and getting a rebuy on the mulligan there. Now, Serum Powder is a card that has definitely shot up in playability.
And there was a mulligan to 4.
Mulligan to 4. Yeah, but sometimes that's all this deck needs. It's got some very powerful early game options with cards like Chalice of the Void and what have you. However, Tin Nguyen, a person of great taste and refinement, Simon, because he's playing it nothing other than Scapeshift, the finest deck in Modern. And the reason I like this deck so much is it's easy. It's so easy, man. It's like a sorcery speed, easy combo deck. You just count to 18. I mean, it is hard. Actually, counting to 18 is pretty difficult. But if you can count to 18, you can win the Scapeshift all day long.
That would be like the first character you get to play in a video game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've opened up Dive Kick for the first time, and you can play either Dive or Kick before you unlock.
You can do 2 things, but they're quite good.
They're both quite good. Yeah, exactly right. And if Scapeshift isn't good enough to get there, well, smashing your opponent in the face with Prime Time is going to probably get you across the line. Very, very good against humans. It's got a great matchup against other creature decks. Struggles a little bit against other decks in the format, especially at the top. It's not the best choice right now. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to defend it, but it's a questionable choice, I think, to put it diplomatically.
You see the payoff that Ben Hull got from mulliganing to 4, is a turn 3/3.
A turn 3/3. So this is the world we live in now, Simon. This is the world we live in.
But Ben Hull actually has some cards that he would be excited about. I think Blood Moon. An early Blood Moon has some potential against Scapeshift. The problem that I really see here is against Scapeshift, all your lock pieces and Eldrazi's are just not that relevant.
Here's something very interesting, Simon. I wonder if you can solve this mystery for us here. Tin Nguyen is continually activating his own relics, targeting himself to keep all of his graveyard in exile. What's going on there?
Good question. I don't know if there's anything that could punish him for having cards in the graveyard.
Like, there's no reanimate effects here that are going to steal creatures
Surgical
out of
Extraction?
I guess maybe that's a consideration here.
If you don't have anything to do with your graveyard, I guess it's an upside to just remove your cards.
Yeah.
Because Surgical Extraction is not live.
But Tin Nguyen firing on all cylinders. Look at that. He's got a bunch of lands in play. He's not going to be able to combo off with 7 lands here, of course. This is the number that Scapeshift needs to get to. But with Primeval Titan, he's going to get it done. Search up 2 more lands. And this is going to end the game very quickly. You can cast all the 3-mana 3/3s you want, but in the face of the massive prime time, Simon, you're going to have a bad time. It's a bad time with prime time.
This seems like one of these matchups where Ben Heil put a lot of thought into his deck, and he did all the math with the London Mulligan and open deck list, and then he's just facing a matchup that seems close to unwinnable.
Yeah, Tin Nguyen is playing cards with monsters, and he's going to. I mean, yeah. Think the wind is definitely in his sails. We can come back to this match and see how it shakes out because the players on Alpha are ready, and we don't want to keep them waiting too much longer. There, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz facing off, as we said, against Matthew Costa. An easy peasy lemon squeezy victory for the Frenchman in game number 1. See, they're ready to rumble in game number 2. Now, Simon, you've just received a dispatch from the man with the numbers, Dr. Frank Carsten, who has some info about Matt Costa and his spicy one-off boomerang.
Yes, it's not only a spicy one-off in his deck, it's the spicy one-off in this tournament.
In the tournament, yes.
Actually, if you had asked me before the tournament how many boomerangs are we going to see, I would have said 0.
If I said 0.5,
I would have taken the under.
Every single time. But Matthew Costa here, flipping the script. So a one-off in the most, in the most determined sense possible here from Matthew Costa. Do things get better from him post-board? He's down a game, obviously, after that main deck rest in peace, wrecked him in game number 1. But, I mean, are things changing now we're into game number 2?
Yes and no.
Okay, great. A true answer of the mathematician.
Rest in peace is still a big problem. You can spell pierce it, but that's not something that Depraz has to run into. You can... if you had access to something like Spell Snare, you would have a hard counter available, but I don't see that in Costa's sideboard. Actually, his sideboard cards, Anger of the Gods, Blood Moon, Ceremonious Rejection, that's just not what you want against Blue-White Control.
No. I mean, Dispel can do some good work. Spell Pierce is reasonable when you're on the front foot and smashing some pickets. But what I like to see out of Matthew Costa's sideboard here, Jace and Ral to position to a post rest in peace landscape. But right now it doesn't matter. We're getting it done with Full Shock Berserker.
So this is maybe the best approach you can take as the Izzet Phoenix deck. You're not trying to fight an uphill battle against Rest in Peace, but instead you're trying to minimize your exposure to Rest in Peace and still have more game plans than in game 1.
So Arclight Phoenix, of course, a defining card of the modern format, joining us very recently in Guild of Ravnica, of course, Simon, and it has gone on to spawn its own archetype. It first appeared in mono red decks in standard, powered up by Steamkin Runaway, but very quickly added blue for cards like Serum Visions, Opt, other blue cantrips like that, and it's done good work, pairing with Thing in the Ice as well, Pyromancer, Ascension, whatever else. Here is a Celestial Purge, and that's a fantastic answer as it one-shots that Phoenix. It's out of the game, never coming back.
Yeah, absolutely huge play here. And Costa's hand, he has powerful cards here, but they are a little bit situational, and also he currently doesn't have land number 3.
So a difficult spot for him to be in, although with cards like Faithless Looting, Metamorphose in hand, you'd think that Costa will have the tools he needs to find further resources.
But what you want to do, you kind of want to wait with those lootings, right? Because you currently don't know what you actually want to discard or what you want to find.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think as we have a look at what's in Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's hand here, it's not looking good. It's actually a very poor augury for Matthew Costa here. Not only Path to Exile, not only Celestial Purge, but ongoing interaction, card draw, and ways to continue the pressure. The only thing that Depraz needs to make sure he hits his land drops, and then I think it's going to be smooth sailing for him here.
I did like Matthew's decision to go for the second red permanent in Pyromancer Ascension because Celestial Purge was just cast. However, there's a second.
What are the chances of having second? Well, 50-50. They either have it or they don't. But here is Matthew Costa now with a Metamorphose, and I think this is the point at which he starts to dig for lands. Depraz with an Opt in hand. I think he's going to fire that one off in search of another land here. But just casting your eyes over the 75 that Depraz has brought to bear here, he's very prepared for this modern format.
Depraz has just bluffed a Spell Pierce. He didn't let that Mana Morphos resolve immediately.
Oh, he wasn't on the F6, the auto pass.
And the great thing is, because he's casting Opt, it actually looks plausible. He reveals that he could have cast something, but he opts to cast Opt instead at the end of turn. So a really nice bluff there.
So, plenty of lands in hand now for Matt Costa. Halfway through resolving a Faithless Looting after that Mana Morpho is resolved here. And it'll be interesting to see what he holds on to.
Yeah,
3 lands.
I think Spell Pierce is amazing in this matchup. Even later on in the game, you will be able to counter 4-drops like Cryptic Command or Jace. At the same time, Matt needs those lands. And if you discard a Crackling Drake here, well, you're discarding your most powerful threats.
One of the interesting wrinkles to this tournament, we've talked about the open deck list policy already, Simon, and I've just had a look at Depraz's sideboard here, which is bereft of any copies of Spell Pierce. So I wonder if Depraz was on the old muscle memory, I'll pretend I have interaction, or whether he was maybe bluffing the spell Snare that's in his sideboard, or what his approach was there, because you do lose some bluffing equity when you can't pretend the card is in your 75. Like, Costa knows he doesn't have to play around Spell Pierce.
But I guess the bluff still works if there is the potential of having Dispel or Spell Snare. And in this case, I'm a bit less of a fan because, well, with Spell Pierce, you know that it's not going to be usable at some point, so there's actually a reasonable shot that you would just counter a Mana Morphos. With something like Spell Snare, maybe you wouldn't be thinking all that hard. Yeah,
you get something like a Thing in the Ice or another Pyromaster Ascension or something like that. In any case, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz leveraging that Mana Leak to get rid of the Crackling Drake before it hits the battlefield and can provide some value for Costa here. And a Faithless Looting flashed back from the yard. 2 more freshies off the top here for Costa. He finds Opt and another Island. So the lands certainly have not been lacking here. But Costa with a hand that doesn't really do a lot, just a lot of air. I mean, a Ral is an optimistic play at this stage with no way to really protect it.
So the thing is about Ral, I know it's a 5 casting cost Planeswalker, but it's actually a 6 mana play.
Yes, because you need the Spell Pierce.
If you don't have the Spell Pierce and you're playing against blue-white control, that Ral is not going to see the light of day.
No. It's going to see nowhere but the stack in the bin. And here now is a Field of Ruin. I would say, Simon, are you ready for a Riley Knight's big call? You ready for a big call with your mate, Riley Knight?
I am.
The best Field of Ruin deck in Modern is white-blue control.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Not probably, mate. It's on the record. Riley Knight, that's an RKBC, just for you, my friend. It's the best Field of Ruin deck in Modern because it has single-handedly turned the white-blue control matchup against Tron across 3 games on its head. It's so... I mean, it was a buy for Tron to play against a blue-white based deck. Now, it's a completely different story. And it has that many basics that it can just completely change the way we look at land destruction in Modern. We see another copy of Field of Ruin, and I'm not surprised to see the full 4 copies in the deck of Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, and it's going to do so much work for him.
And often the Izzet Phoenix deck only has 4 or 5 basic lands.
Yeah.
So sometimes only a single mountain and those 3 islands that you see on Costa's side of the battle.
I mean, there are plenty of greedy mana bases in the Modern format. Dredge, Humans.
Actually, another more subtle card that also benefits from open deck lists. If you know there's a greedy mana base, you can attack it immediately.
Yeah, exactly right. You can go, well, say goodbye to all your red sources, my friend. That's it. Get them out of here. So, Thing in the Ice now. Hieroglyphic Illumination in response from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. Draws a couple of cards. He's obviously confident that he can answer this Thing in the Ice. He's got a full grit.
He doesn't even have to answer it right now.
No.
So, he's going to take his sweet time. He has Costa where he wants him to be.
Now, Simon, let me just get your perspective on the fact that Matthew Costa has brought in at least 1 copy of Blood Moon. A perplexing, a mystery, a riddle, Simon, for you to unpick. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But Matthew Costa, one of the best players in the world, of course. I'm not questioning the fact that he's obviously got his reasons for it. But Simon, I'm interested to know, what are those reasons?
So, I think there are actually multiple reasons.
Okay.
So, Celestial Colonnade is one of them. Field of Ruin we've already touched upon. It's unlikely that you really get to color screw the white-blue deck,
No.
but it does affect the utility of the lands that they have.
Okay.
And then the other reason is always, what are you taking out? Like, what is the price you pay for bringing in that Blood Moon? And my first instinct would be that you just have enough cards to take out those Flame Slashes, Surgical Extraction you certainly don't want. Maybe you also want to take out some cards that are just not good against Rest in Peace, or you don't want the full playset of Lightning Bolts, and suddenly you have so many slots that you fit in a Blood Moon.
And I guess like you've got the Miser's one of Blood Moon or something like that, and then you just get a free win sometimes. When they lead on like Hallowed Fountain, Glacial Fortress, you go turn 3 Blood Moon, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I don't know if that was at the top of Matt's
No, but
mind.
if let's
in
say
other matchups, like I could see it.
Yeah.
In the sense that my matchup is really bad, but I could just win with Blood Moon. But do you really hope that against the 8 basic deck?
Well, I'm trying to find reasons. I'm trying to persuade myself that Blood Moon is the right call in this matchup. I don't see it. I'm not. I mean, maybe I'll get the chance to catch up with Costa. I'm certainly not trying to throw any shade at Matthew for his reasoning here, because I mean he's a much better player than I'll ever be, and certainly he's got his reasons. It's something that makes me wonder.
No, very very reasonable take there. I do see that.
That's what's known in the business as a Riley Knight small call.
I do see that Costa overall doesn't have too many sideboard cards against blue-white, and I think that's the main reason.
So Depraz in the position he really does want to be in, under no pressure, plenty of lands in play, plenty of cards in hand, double path, double cryptic, illumination, and an EE as well. Now a lightning bolt is going upstairs. It looks like Costa is really hoping to flip this thing and get busy with it, but it's just it's not going to do what he wants it to do in the face of that the double path to exile. Even an Arclight Phoenix, I think, is just not going to be the bird for the job here, Simon.
If you ask me, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz went to this tournament and said, Izzet Phoenix is the tier 1 deck of Modern, and we hadn't had that in a very long time, maybe ever. So now suddenly you have a deck to target, and Depraz doesn't want to lose against Izzet.
He's just coming and say, I'm not going to lose this deck.
And I don't see him losing many games to Izzet Phoenix.
No, not with the way that the deck's been put together.
In Modern, you can always lose, right? There's always these crazy games where suddenly there are a bunch of Phoenixes on the battlefield on turn 2.
But on the balance of probabilities,
yeah,
on a normal day,
match win percentage probably over 80%.
Yeah, that's what I put it.
I don't want to say 90, but
well,
above
90 is. But if I can get you to 90, I can get you to 100. So I wouldn't go as far as 90 either. Yeah. So path to exile here, handily dealing with the 3/2. That's another Phoenix hitting the exile zone, and I think Cost is well past the point where Arclight Phoenix is doing the heavy lifting here.
No, and you can tell also from the demeanor of these players. They are playing on, but Depraz just sitting there saying, look, I have answers for everything.
Yeah.
I don't even care for your thing in the eyes. Do you want to hit me for 7? Sure, I'll path it if I flips.
So Field of Ruin now on that Steam Vents.
And that should be the final basic. Yep.
So just a straight up strip mine. Well, Wasteland. Well, Wasteland with an activated ability, but that replaces itself. It has passing similarity to the card Wasteland, Simon.
In that you can sacrifice it.
To destroy another land. Yeah. I mean, it has passing similarity to the card Grizzly Bear in that it is a card that is legal to play in the Modern format.
The spot that Matt finds himself in reminds me of one of my favorite Modern Pro Tours that I played, where I was playing the Pyromancer Ascension combo deck.
Oh yeah.
Basically Storm combo in game 1. I also played Tarmogoyfs and Punishing Fires.
Yeah.
Because I thought that would be awesome.
Yeah, right.
And then I had this genius plan of also transforming into Pestomite Splinter Twin combo.
Oh, right out the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really surprised my opponents because
so you had 180 cards in your deck or what?
No, it was a tight package.
A tight 67?
Very tight
All right,
package.
okay.
So I won my first game with Pyromancer Ascension. That was the idea.
Path to Exile removes the Awoken Horror here.
And then I would transform into Pestomite Splinter Twin.
Like a beautiful butterfly.
And of course, they wouldn't have answers to red enchantments, right? Oh, but they did because they wanted to get rid of Pyromancer Ascendant.
Oh, so they brought in the Celestial Purges?
Yeah, and because I was playing Tarmogoyfs, they also kept in their creature removal.
Oh, no.
So,
So you just took it from both angles, mate. Oh, no.
my plan didn't go.
Yeah, they absolutely
really
they ran rings around you by the sound of it. Here's a Cryptic Commando. That's keeping the board nice and clear. Time really running out for Matthew Costa. A handy removal of that thing in the ice as it woke up with the Path to Exile. And now Cryptic Command to remove that Crackling Drake. So Jean-Emmanuel Depraz very much channeling the opponent that ran rings around you when you played your 67-card special, Simon.
It was a lot of fun because, of course, I noticed myself that this wasn't optimal.
Oh, yeah.
But I just kept pretending that it was great.
It was perfect. I think that's what a lot of players do.
You have to because, you have to enjoy yourself still.
But like every deck guide I've read on every site ever, all the deck guides have more than 50% against more than 50% of the decks. Every deck is slightly favoured. Do you know what I mean? Which just doesn't, like, mathematically doesn't make sense. But that's just the way it is. Costa now. What's he got for 3 mana here? Might have a Faithless Looting out the yard.
We didn't see a single Rest in Peace ever.
Does Depraz just take him out?
No.
He's like, turn 2, get you. Game number 1, there's like, don't need him anymore.
Next level.
Turns up the difficulty to Legendary, you know?
To Mythic.
Mythic difficulty. There's no, obviously, if you've played MTG Arena, there's no difficulty setting on that. One time I was playing with my good friend Dennis Stranjak. The video is actually online. You can find it on YouTube. Because we needed to up, this is very easy, Magic's very easy. So we wanted to up the difficulty. So we started playing Portuguese.
Oh.
Just to make things a little bit harder, you know. Just that's the only difficulty setting in MTG Arena is you just change the language. You want Nightmare mode, you go to Japanese. Because then it's like, you don't have any frame of reference. Portuguese you can kind of stitch together with some of the words, but no, I'm completely out on a limb with the Asian languages. Here's Teferi now. The Scourge of Standard, also getting it done in Modern. And a Thought Scour for Matthew Costa. Teferi is going to be a very hard card for Costa to deal with. Such a high loyalty, Simon, to come in with. A Lightning Bolt's not going to take him out. And as a result, this may be Depraz finally turning the corner on this game and pulling together a W.
It's kind of sad how Ral is one of the sideboard cards that Costa has available, but the way the game shaped up, he never had the mana at the right moment to not just play into one of the 2 or 1 mana or 2 or 4 mana counter spells of Depraz.
And now it's just too late because Depraz in hand, as you can see here, Dispel, Double Cryptic, Hieroglyphic Illumination. So he's going to be able to back up. He's going to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, and that's it. He's walked himself right across the finish line here. Easy game for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, winning very, very comfortably, Simon. And as we talked about here, right, we talked about the fact that Jean-Emmanuel Depraz was ready for this matchup. He didn't want to lose it, and he showed us exactly what that means in this game against Matthew Costa.
Yep. It's not a guarantee, but like we said, we would estimate this to be an 80% matchup for Depraz with open deck list starting this round, with the ability to decide if Rest in Peace is actually great or not. And of course, it's not just for this matchup. No. There are a lot of decks.
A lot of splash damage.
And we are looking at the top 5 decks, and you are happy to have that against Izzet Phoenix and Dredge. Equally, I would say.
Let's hear from the man of the moment himself, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, standing by with Tim Willoughby. Tim.
Well, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, it felt to me almost like you were playing the sideboarded game of your match in game 1 there. Tell us a little bit about having Rest in Peace in the main deck of your blue-white control deck.
So the main reason is Dredge, because game 1 they don't have enchantment removal. So if you want Rest in Peace to be effective, you have to play it since game 1 and mulligan into it. The London mulligan helps because with the London mulligan, you're like, I think you gain like 12% chances to get it in your opening hand if you're ready to mulligan to 3 to get it. And on the play, it's usually game. On the draw, it gives you good odds, at least better than nothing. And against Phoenix, it's less radical, but it's still a very good card, and I happened to draw it in my opening hand, so that was great.
Yeah, it must be one of those strange things, because the other element of this tournament is deck lists are visible, right? So when you're mulliganing, you can prepare to try and get the card you need. But also, like, if you're Matt Costa there and you see main deck Rest in Peace, and you like, that must be a difficult thing to adjust for.
Yeah, he has one boomerang in his list, so that was the one thing I had to play around once I had one Rest in Peace, and that's why I played the second copy, to make him use the boomerang and go for it. And I don't know, I guess he had one or two other Manamorphoses and could have ticked up Ascension to 2, but yeah, that was his only window. It makes it very difficult for him. He has to rely on Crackling Drake, but it's not a very good threat against a control deck, and yeah.
Tough times there, and ultimately good deck building working out well for you so far. You've been all blue all the time, but none of the blues here for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, doing very nicely indeed here at the Mythic Championship. Handing things back over to you guys.
Thanks so much, Tim, down there with the MPL player Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. Now, my friends, the good news continues because we've got more Magic to show you. Time Walk Magic. We're loading it into the canister, my friends. We're getting those wheels spinning. We're going to take a quick break to straighten everything out, and then on the other side of this, we'll be back with Time Walk Magic. Oh, well, nope, never mind. We've got it here for you right now. No waiting, my friends. Look at that. The elves working double time behind the scenes to get this in front of your faces right here, right now. Makis Matsoukas and Joe So. We've got Matsoukas here, the Greek superstar on hardened scales. But let's talk about Joe So's Ores of Midrange, Simon.
Yes, this is a deck that's playing all the good black-white cards that you know from Abzan decks. Mm-hmm. So the Inquisition of Kozilek, the Path to Exiles, Lingering Souls, of course, Fatal Push. And then on top of that, you're playing a bunch of cards specific to this strategy in Tidehollow Sculler, Wasteland Strangler, Thought Not Seer, so you have a little bit of an Eldrazi element.
Makis Matsoukas is halfway through what's known in the business, Simon, as a London Mulligan. He's drawn 7 cards, and he's going to have to put some number of them on the bottom. I think he's just mulliganing here to 6, so it's going to be just 1 that goes below decks now. But this is a new feature of this tournament that's being stress tested, I have to say, by the pros here in Modern. The London Mulligan was slated as a pretty considerable upgrade to the Mulligan process. However, Simon, there were some concerns that maybe in a format like Modern, where decks can get a little bit degenerate, it may have been a little bit too powerful. So we're testing it this weekend.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at even older formats, at the older Eternal formats, you can quite easily identify cards where the London Mulligan is a huge upgrade. I'm talking about the Bazaar of Baghdad level kind of card. I don't see these cards in Modern. I think mulliganing is still punishing.
It's still bad.
And I don't buy these arguments that Tron is the same deck whether you have 7 cards or 4 cards.
Well,
as long as they are, 3 Tron lands and a Karn.
I stayed on top of the discussion. Obviously, I didn't contribute to it. I'm not smart enough to have opinions like that. But I did stay on top of what people were talking about when it came to the London Mulligan. And one thing that was really interesting, this impassioned argument against the London Mulligan that kept coming up from these diehards who didn't want to let go of the way things are, these Luddites who didn't want to embrace the change. And they said, no, we can never have the London Mulligan in Eternal formats because basically it means that vintage decks get to play Bazaar of Baghdad as their commander. They'll just always have it in their opening hand. And I was thinking, okay, it's a good argument. But if your main argument for the widespread deployment of a game-changing rule across multiple formats is 1 card in an underplayed format, I don't know how much water that particular argument is going to hold, my friend.
If that's your best
I'm not denying that Vintage Dredge receives a considerable upgrade because of the London Mulligan. I'm just saying that its relevance in the world of competitive Magic is not completely overblown. In any case, my friends, we're off to the races here. Matsoukas and So here. A hardened scales picked off by that Inquisition of Kozilek from the Malaysian.
And Matsoukas took his time with that Mulligan. You can actually tell that this process of putting cards on the bottom after you have shuffled and drawn is not muscle memory for these players. Yet.
Exactly right. It doesn't have that kind of flow to it here as a Tidehollow Sculler comes down from Joe. So now the man with the numbers, Dr. Frank Carsten, has got in touch with me. There's been a special dispatch from the good doctor. He said, Riley, notes on Joe So's decks for the Time Walk match here. No Leon and Arbiter, so we can't really call it Eldrazi and Taxes. It doesn't have Reality Smasher, so it's not really a black-white Eldrazi. It's mid-range because it has Planeswalker's removal discard spells. It's got Eternal Scourge but no Serum Powder, so you can exile it with Relic and then replay it. But bullet point number 5 is the one that I really think gives us the greatest amount of insight into what the Malaysians playing here. And these are the words of Dr. Frank Carsten. I'm not editorializing at all. Dot point number 5, Joe So's deck. Just a really weird list overall. Just a really weird list overall, Simon Gertzen.
And we haven't even talked about the one of Surgical Extraction, the one of Kaya, or of Usurper. And I think it's a sweet list. I think, honestly, Joe So, he has impressed me with his drafting already today.
This is a casual 3-0.
And he knows his way around black-white decks.
Oh, yeah.
He's played these decks in the past. He likes to take a little bit of a different angle on things. And something that I find pretty obvious is that these discard removal heavy strategies are just better
1 second, Simon.
with a lot of money.
I'm just going to take this call. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Hello? Oh, yes. Yes, of course. I'll let them know. Sorry, it's 2015, and they want their weird draft mechanic back because we're seeing Wasteland Strangler process the card that has been exiled by the Tidehollow Sculler here. It's putting the Spellskite in the graveyard and giving the Walking Ballista -3/-3 Oath of the Gatewatch Draft All-Star. Wasteland Strangler is getting it done here.
Yep. For those that remember, it seemed like both players had to kind of confirm.
Yeah,
what was
they'd be
going
like,
on
is
there.
this exactly... I mean, even Joseph was like, I'm pretty sure this is how it works, right? I'm pretty sure that's how this works.
And the really counterintuitive part is that not that something gets -3/-3, but the fact that Tidehollow Sculler is not supposed to exile something indefinitely.
No, that's the thing, yeah.
You don't really look at the card as something in exile. You look at it as
It's like on hold.
Yeah.
It's in the
Paused.
shadow. It's in the shadow realm, yeah. But Wasteland Strangler doesn't care how the card was exiled. It doesn't matter at all. And here's another way for cards to get exiled. It looks like it's going to this time be an Arcbound Ravager. And this is just another weird small bit of synergy in Joe So's deck here. Wasteland Strangler is a very... I mean, coming down as effectively a 3-mana Shriekmaw, that's no joke.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine having this against humans, for example, after curving out like this. I don't know what to say. But if I compare this to Ben Halt's deck, which is like all-in red Eldrazi, yeah, it can spike maybe better. You can also lock out people earlier with help of Simian Spirit Guide. But this deck of Joe So, it's always going to play a really solid game plan. But this is no joke. This is a 2/2, a 3/2, Necrotal, and a Thought-Knot Seer.
And the thing is, when you break not the parity, but when you break the downside of Tidehollow Sculler, if you want, like a 2-mana 2/2 that forces them to that has a built-in Thought Seize, that's an amazing card.
Yep.
That's an amazing card. And the fact that you're building it with another card that holds its own as a 3-mana 3/2 that can kill something, I remember the episode's Limited Resources, where they'd say, never put bad cards in your deck to do one good thing. And Joso isn't doing that. He's putting 2 good cards in to do an even better thing. And that's fantastic. I love this unorthodox approach that the Malaysians taken here. And
another Wasteland Strangler coming down. Joso targeting Walking Ballista. And this is actually tricky because now Marcus has priority and has to decide what to do here.
So, of course, with that Arcbound Ravager that was exiled thanks to the Thought-Knot Seer, we're going to see the removal of that Walking Ballista once again. And, I mean, Joe So just firing on all cylinders. I mean, this is more or less exactly what this deck wants to do. Huge stuff here from him. And, I mean, you can have a look at the list right now. That Cardboard Live extension is going to show you exactly what is going on with this starting 60 and some of the cards in the sideboard as well. So, I mean, get to building. This deck rules.
We do have to say that Matsukas didn't really do much, but we were also looking at a Mulligan, an Inquisition, and a Tidehollow Scholar. And I want to catch up on something you said. The fact that the Tidehollow Scholar card was scheduled to come back at some point meant that Wasteland Strangler was not just a 2-for-1, but actually a 3-for-1, if you count that card going to the graveyard as an additional value gain.
For sure. Well, Matsukas is trying to flip the script here with a turn 1 Hardened Scales, just what the doctor ordered. But a Gemstone Cavern is going to power out a Inquisition of Kozilek here.
Shouldn't it have a luck counter on it?
I can't see the luck counter. Perhaps a leprechaun has taken it and spirited away across the Irish Sea. In any case, Inquisition of Kozilek is going to clear out that... is that a Nature's Claim?
It is, but is that really the scarier card than an Arcbound Ravager?
Well,
maybe depending on what Joso is planning to do next.
Joso may have an answer to the Ravager in hand here, which of course comes in as a 2/2 with the help of that hardened scales.
Or just a Stony
Stony
Silence.
Silence, easy. All right, so now a Grizzly Bears has been played by Makis Matsoukas.
And Stony Silence, as long as it's not answered, one of the best cards you can have against basically all the artifact decks in the format. Matsoukas has kind of a nice draw here, actually, because he's putting a lot of power on the battlefield without needing to activate artifacts.
And I think Joso is going to respect that. Which member? Oh, it's Dismember. As we remove now the Arcbound Ravager that's in play already. Of course, its ability can't be activated, so we're not going to have any Arcbound silliness here going on.
Yeah.
But
the important part here was that the second Ravager was still on the stack. So Joso making absolutely sure that no modular triggers would happen.
So we see now the Llanowar Reborn put 2 copies, or 2 counters, I should say, on the Arcbound Ravager, which comes in with 2 thanks to Hardened Scales. Already we're seeing the power of Hardened Scales. Even through a Stony Silence, Matsoukas is really giving it his best shot and swinging around the left and the right here. But down to just 1 card in hand, Simon. A reasonable board presence, but not an overwhelming one.
Yeah, and I can already tease that we will have Modern Master Matt Nass give us a deck tech.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he...
Famed Lil Dicky impersonator Matt Nass is going to get it done.
I think we should just be happy to have him talk about Modern.
Yeah, he's a gift. He's a gift to Magic players around the world. So now, a Hangerback Walker. None of these cards particularly impressive in the face of that Stony Silence. So that's good stuff from Joe So. And of course, one of the reasons to play white in Modern is access to hard-hitting sideboard cards, hammer cards, like Stony Silence.
It's rare that the player that played Stony Silence is actually looking to be losing the game. But here, with the Ravager on 4, 2 Thopters joining the party, but that is a huge play.
That changes things hugely.
Why did Makis block there? That doesn't seem like the play you have to make.
So we see a couple of high-flying Thopters here after the departure of the Hangerback Walker. And Fatal Push handily removing that Arcbound Ravager.
And of course, the Thopters are in play. We're just getting the correct tokens.
I mean, the guys on those tokens look like they could jump pretty high. But I wouldn't say as high as the Thopters. And there are very strict height requirements for these. So it's like a roller coaster. You must be this high. You must jump this high to appear in the feature match area.
Yeah, bit of a weird sequencing there from Makis, who plays his Arcbound Worker first, then decides to draw a card.
Here's an Inquisition of Kozilek, reveals another copy of Hardened Scales and a Throne of Geth.
I think Makis could have just not sacrificed the Horizon Canopy, and that would have protected his hand a little bit better from discard.
In they come now, across for 4, still providing the punishment here. And Joso knocked down to 6, so this one is not over yet. Inkmoth Nexus and a Throne of Geth. And Joso, I think just a land in hand.
Yeah, I have to go back to that very first turn. I just think taking Nature's Claim in retrospect was the wrong call. You were looking at a hand that didn't really have great synergies that relied on sacrificing artifacts, but you knew that this was quite a lot of power just entering the battlefield.
Now, obviously, he did it to protect that Stony Silence, but it wasn't, in the long run, it hasn't paid the dividends that you hoped for. Now, across come the Thopters for 2. The Arcbound Worker's going to run afoul of a Mutavault here, but now there's a massive 3/3 flyer on the battlefield, and Matsoukas just been nickeling and diming Joso out of the game here.
Yeah, and Joso doesn't even have anything to block flyers here. Those are Mutavaults, if you were wondering.
Yes.
That promo land that got activated.
The Magic Fest promo Mutavaults there. And right now, they're not doing a whole lot in the face of this Greek Air Force here, which is taken to the skies bravely. And Joso with a lethal attack coming his way next turn. I think you're right in saying, like, it's difficult to pinpoint the moment at which it went wrong for Joso, but this is one of the things, and especially if you're new to Magic, I mean, welcome, by all means welcome, but you're going to have to get used to the fact that tiny decision points made turns and turns ago will ultimately have an impact on the game, and eventually, you reap what is sown. And as a result, Matsoukas evens things up at 1-1, Simon.
Yeah, and of course, it's a lot easier with hindsight and caster vision, but maybe Joso could have done things differently. Still, pretty anemic draws from both sides in that game too.
So Joe So cycles away a cast out here. And for a 2-drop has a Tide Hollow Sculler. So let's see if Joe So can pull together the incredible synergies we saw in game number 1 there. Double Nature's Claim, Spell Skied, a Metallic Mimic, in addition to an Arcbound Ravager. Those are the available options here for Joe So. And looks like it's going to be Spell Skied once again.
So Metallic Mimic is definitely one of the more unusual cards to put in your Hardened Scales deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm quite happy to see this hand with no green stories right now, and also none of the really scary 2-drops.
Simon, what creature type is Arcbound Ravager? Let's see if he knows his eggs here, ladies and gentlemen.
Arcbound Ravager is a construct.
Construct.
Horror.
Oh, so close. Beast.
Construct. Beast?
Beast, yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, and that was errated as well. It's not printed on the old copy of the card.
So you're saying I would have been right a few years ago?
Yeah. If I'd asked you this question like in grandpa times, then you definitely would have been right here.
You should see my collection of Arcbound Ravagers.
Yeah.
They are so worn out.
They've been through the wars.
They've been through a lot.
Oh, they've been through the wars, have they? They're busted up, are they?
I'm talking Darksteel original.
Yeah, of course, yeah. They look like, they were played like on the asphalt at a primary school by the kids.
Not quite that, but they've seen a lot of PDQ play.
They've had a lot of +1/+1 counters put on them. Well, here's Arcbound Worker. That is just a construct here. Just a construct. And now another Inquisition by the look of things here for Joe So. Going to take one of those Nature's Claims. Oh, no, it's going to be the Arcbound Ravager instead, the Construct Beast.
Oh, we see our favorite play here once more. That's probably the reason why So always takes the Spellskite. It's just so good against Wasteland Strangler.
Yeah.
And he got the 2-for-1, call it a 3-for-1 if you want, just like in the first game.
And I think that's a real draw to this deck. I think if you can sequence a Tide Hollow Sculler into a Wasteland Strangler and get value off both of those cards, you are just so far ahead. And it's not an immediate sort of gut punch, Tron on turn 3 Haymaker. It's this value where your opponent at some point, they're like, how do I only have one card in hand?
For modern standards, it's almost modest. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm generating some value. This would be great and limited. But no, I really like it. I'm not usually a player that wants to play Eldrazi Temples, but I do respect this.
I think one way to characterize your approach to Game of Magic, as we see the big attack now from Joe So, is that you are fully vaccinated against fancy play syndrome.
Well, I wish.
Well, I mean, you used to come down with fits of it back in the days when you were playing 67 card decks at Grand Prix and whatever else. But these days, however, so another piece of hand disruption here. Joe So really able to just tear opponents' hands to bits here with now the Thought Not Seer. And he's really putting the screws on Makis Matsoukas, who just hasn't come up with the goods. A Hardened Scales off the top he can't cast. 2 copies of Nature's Claim he can't cast. And Joe So kicking goals with both feet. He's going to get in for 6.
And one thing that you can see here, which is very obvious, is even if Matsoukas draws green, the color he's been missing, none of these cards are going to get him out of this.
No, I mean, Nature's Claim can destroy the Tide Hollow Sculler, but I mean, at that case, it's just a kind of bad Doomblade. I don't know. Here's an Arcbound Worker here. All the Whistler's mothers in the world are not going to do anything here for Makis Matsoukas as Joe So is powering towards victory, defending his undefeated record in style now. And we're going to see another Wasteland Strangler to remove that Arcbound Worker, and that is enough to prompt the concession from Makis Matsoukas, and that is all she wrote for round number 5 of Mythic Championship 2. What a game. I really want to see more of Joe So.
So I just realized that just like Depraz doesn't want to lose against Izzet Phoenix, this black-white deck doesn't look like it loses to creature decks all that often, but also you're playing a bunch of Graveyard Hate because that's your incidental combo with Wasteland Strangler. So maybe this deck is just good against the field.
Yeah, I really do hope we get to see more of the Malaysian feeding them the left and the right in the feature match area. But right now, we're going to take a break, my friends. We're going to be back with more action here from Mythic Championship 2 in just a few moments.